Welcome back, CSE 121, to exercise 3 test scores. Now, we already did this, we already finished it. I just wanted to show you one last thing, so I'm doing this as a part 2 of the video. Now, I'm going to leave this num test here. We did like a counter, and obviously that adds a lot of code in here because we're just adding to the counter. And the only thing that really helped was just not having 4 here, not having an absolute number, and then same thing here. But it did add all these lines of code to tally that up. But that's okay. One other thing, since we use this method with just tallying up the numbers of how many tests, one thing we could do is we could try to do this, and instead of having a separate variable for each test input, what if we just did something like this? If we just did test score, we'll just call this test score, and I'm going to copy this, and we had them all test score. And then we just kind of add to them, we add them up as we go. That would help us so we don't have to add these things up down here. If we could do that, and we could use the same method, but we'd have to start off with, just like we did, we'd have to start off with a 0. So I'm going to start here, I'm going to copy that and put that here and say test score equals 0. We have two things here. We're kind of tallying up the number of tests by just using a counter here, and then here we're going to start test score equals 0, and then every time someone inputs something, that'll get added to it. So we could do that, and the way we do that is we just put a plus here. And every time we have that plus score, so we're just, instead of using 4 or 5 variables, how many variables, we're just using the same variable and adding to it as we go instead of doing it later. So it's just going to keep us from doing this whole sum here. We can actually just, we won't even need this. It should already be kind of set up. We could just use test score divided by num test because it'll already be added up. And let's see how this works. The one problem I think we're going to have here, so we shouldn't even need this. We shouldn't even need to add all those up. Now the problem I think we're going to have here, and I'm going to put test scores because it's going to be test score and it should be added up and then divided by number of tests. We're still using that little counter there. Now the only problem we're going to have is we now have nothing that's converting it to an integer. Now we did it down here, we're probably going to have to do it up here, but let's just run it just to see what happens here. And I'll enter test 1 and I'll do the 67s again. And I'm already getting an error, and the reason I'm getting an error because it needs to be an integer. Now I'm trying to add something up because when I got to the next one, when I put in the number, it was trying to add to it. It was already trying to add to the variable once I put in my prompt. So, and because what you put in a prompt comes out as a string, it came up with an error. So what we got to do here, instead of putting the ints on these when we added them up, we have to put the int here before the int. So we're just going to wrap our prompt, our input prompt, with int. Let's copy this. I'll copy the first part here and then just put the outer parenthesis on it. So I'll go here and that should convert them all to int so that when they're adding up integers. They're not adding up strings like that would normally come through here. So let's see what happens there. That's just a little extra thing here, and I'm just going to run it, and I'll keep putting in 67s because I know what the answer should be. And now I'm not getting the error. As you can see, it's letting me put in numbers, so that's good. And it says the average of 5 tests is 53.6. We have to figure out why it's putting 53.6 because the average should be, let's just print out, a way to kind of check this out because it's not a syntax error, it's not a runtime error, but we know that the average should be 67. So it's not doing something correctly. So what we could do here is we could do it before or after. We could say print, and maybe I'm missing something really easy here, but I'm going to say print, and I'm going to put num tests. Well, I don't have to print num tests because it is getting 5. So it is doing 5 here for num tests, but what I'm going to do is print out test score to see that it should be 67 times 5, whatever that is. So we should get 3, I think that's at 335. So let's see what test score comes up with, and then let's see what's wrong here. Maybe we did something ahead of time. Maybe we don't need this plus or equals here on the first one, but let's just try that out and see what happens. So I'm going to run it again, and I'm getting 268, so it's not adding up the last one there for some reason. Okay, that was easy. I went through here and I just started looking. I saw that I did not have a plus here. So everything looked okay, but I forgot to put a plus here. They should all have plus equal, so it wasn't adding this one into it. So they should all have, they're both starting at 0 and they're all adding up, incrementing as they're going, but I forgot I put one in there, so I'm just missing that in there. So let me run it one more time, and I'll just put in my 67s, And there we go. We have an average of 5 tests is 67.0, and we have a 335. So that's a little better. So that's one way of making it more efficient. There's other ways we can make it more efficient, but one way is by just using one variable that collects the number and basically tallies that variable as we go instead of adding it up, instead of doing this. It's just another way of doing that. I don't know if that, I guess it makes it easier. You know, we'll find out if that helps or not. You know, it's less variables we have to deal with, and every time we have, you know, one thing that helps is every time if we add another one here, you know, if I just copied this last one and added one more and we had a 6, I just have to change that to 6, and that's it. And I shouldn't have to change anything else. So I'm going to run this, and I'll put in, and now we have an average of 6 tests. That's 67%. So it updated this, and it updated my average, so everything's okay. So that's just another way to make this a little bit more efficient instead of adding to this, because this is just another kind of addition thing that we have to add to and more chance to make mistakes. So that's kind of a part 2 of EX3, just another way to kind of add some things to it, use what we learned from making the counter and just put that in the variable, so we only have one variable when we're getting inputs, and we're just kind of adding to our original variable as we go and reassigning it with the new input added to it. But the only thing we had to do here is make sure that we're making this as an integer, making sure that whatever they input is going to be converted to an integer right away.